What is the real link between the red heifer and the rebuilding of the Third Temple? Why has the search for it been so crucial since the 1980s, and how does it all tie into the New Testament? What should Christians believe about the temple's restoration? Join us today as we uncover the mysteries that could change Israel's future and the world. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Skywatch Television. I'm Joe Artis Horn. Today we continue a very fascinating discussion with our special guest. Let me introduce him right away. He pastored for 16 years and holds a degree in biblical archaeology. He is the director of the Psalm 19 Project and co-host of the Prophecy Watchers TV program and podcast. Please help me welcome Mondo Gonzales. You know, last week, if you missed the program, go back to the archives, wherever it is that you watch Skywatch Television. Derek would, of course, tell me at this point, cue the mobile app, cue the mobile app. You can download our mobile app, our Skywatch Television mobile app at the App Store. It's free. It's the one place they can't cancel us so far. But if you missed last week's program with our special guest, Mondo, we were talking about his brand new book, and I'm going to bring it up on the screen for you right now. The Mystery of the Red Heifer, Israel, the End Times, and the Building of the Third Temple. And people new to Bible prophecy, we covered a little bit about what the red heifer is, how many of them there need to be, the ceremonial aspects of what they're involved in, how that contributes to and plays a role in the building of the Third Temple, and of course, how all of that fits into the prophetic biblical timeline. And it's a lot to wrap your head around in, 28-minute programs like we're doing. But I thought Mondo did a fabulous job frameworking that for us. Not an easy task, but we're going to hit the ground running this week again, Mondo, because there's still so much to cover about your new book, The Mystery of the Red Heifer. How does the red heifer ritual connect to the building of a third temple, and why has the search for the red heifer held importance since the 1980s?
A lot of people have been introduced to prophecy through the late great Planet Earth by Hal Lindsey, in 1970. As part of that development is this idea that Israel is going to certainly be reestablished, which had already happened certainly by 1970, but also that they would rebuild the temple, which began in earnest their thinking in 1967. So I don't think Hal Lindsey would have written his book in the same way prior to 1967, but it's like, hey, now we're here. And the Bible says in several places that there will be a future physical third temple in the land of Israel on the Temple Mount in operation during the last 7 years of the tribulation period. And so to see all these developments begin to happen, the Jewish people, in their desire to follow Moses and to fulfill the commandments, they realized, well, we can build it, but we can't use it. We need the red heifer. And so originally what they began to do was they began to search in the sense of archaeologically, because the hope was that they would find the ashes of the previous red heifer hidden somewhere, maybe near the Ark of the Covenant, and therefore they would have some sort of continuity. Because in the rabbinic tradition, they would take some of the old ashes, they would have a ceremony and slaughter a new one. They would take the ashes of the new female cow, and they would mix them together. That's not required to do. And so after all the efforts to find them archaeologically, they realized we might not ever find those. Therefore, we are going to try to establish a breeding program for red cows.
How is the red heifer significant in the New Testament? Because I kind of teased that at the open.
To me, this is where for us, we look at we might even ask the question, the Old Testament's a big book. Why did God have thousands and thousands or maybe even millions of animals sacrificed over 1,400 years, before the temple was destroyed? And we would not be able to answer that as clear without the book of Hebrews. But when you come to the book of Hebrews, we see that the writer there is very skilled in Old Testament theology, and the writer is saying, okay, I'm going to show you the supremacy of Jesus. The supremacy of Jesus over three pillars of Judaism, which were angels, and that's chapter 1 and 2, over Moses, we see that in chapter 3 of Hebrews, and the Levitical system. And so when you get to Hebrews 7, really 7 through 10, we see the writer saying the blood of bulls and goats can't take away, sins. But Jesus came to fulfill that. So Jesus is the final sacrifice. Well, he brings up in Hebrews chapter 9, the red heifer. And what he describes was, again, under the old covenant, the red heifer was meant to purify externally if you were ritually impure based on a dead person. And so you'd have this external ritual by sprinkling. And the writer says, look, if that was true for these externals, how much more does the blood of Jesus forever take away our sin and our impurification permanently. He's basically saying, look, everything you saw in the Old Testament was a shadow, and he uses those terminology, was a shadow of what Jesus would accomplish, and that includes the red heifer. It's a beautiful, we are so privileged as New Covenant Christians.
Geopolitically, building that temple would be very problematic. And in the last program, you mentioned Saudi Arabia possibly being part of the administration of the Temple Mount. Well, there are some who think that Mohammed bin Salman is a good candidate for the Antichrist.
Very true. And there's viewpoints about different Messiah figures. I actually think the Messiah will be Jewish. I don't necessarily fall into
I agree with that. It's just so
But it is interesting that it's going to shape the whole region. Saudi Arabia, I think, is part of the end game, no doubt, in the sense of their desire. Because with Mecca and Medina and being the center of Islam for the, you have, again, Turkey and others that are, and the Iranians, you have the Shiite Sunni troubles. But they so much desire to be a part of that. And for them to come in and establish their sovereignty over all of it and to participate with the Jewish people. You look at the new leaders, the young leaders, as you mentioned, of Saudi Arabia, they're not as radical in a disassociation with Israel as we've seen in the past. So to see all this coming to play right now with Abrahamic Accords and other things is extremely fascinating as it relates to timing. One of the things I say in the book is that, we're not making this stuff up. I mean, we're not just reading into it. Not only do you have a convergence of prophetic signs in all of the areas, but just under the temple, the Third Temple movement, even under that umbrella, you have all of these things converging together. The political nature of the government, the changing views of the rabbis about the Temple Mount, again, the Abrahamic Accords, the other external things, the search for the red heifer, the Temple Institute, all of these things are coming together and you're going, well, why now?
Yeah.
Again, we're not making this up. We're living in very fascinating times.
And this has been ongoing for a long time. And this is one of the reasons I believe that the Temple Mount is exactly where the rabbis believe it is. I know there's some who believe that the Second Temple was actually in the city of David or somewhere else. But the fact that all of this spiritual conflict has taken place over the Temple Mount, and not just in the 20th century. There was an attempt to rebuild the temple under the Emperor Hadrian in the early 2nd century. He changed his mind. That may have contributed to the Bar Kokhba rebellion, which led to the depopulation of Judea. The Romans basically said, okay, no more Jews. We're going to rename it to Palestine, which is why it was called Palestine until 1948. They tried to rebuild it again in the 4th century. And there was a big earthquake around the year 363 that destroyed that temple. Not God's timing, not yet. But things do seem to be coming together in the 21st century.
Yeah, in the book, one of the chapters about that, every attempt. And there's been several. And God's like, nope. Julian the Apostate was there.
Julian the Apostate,
was
the 4th
helping,
century,
nope.
right.
So finally we come to our age, now that Israel's back. And I have a lot of friends and family who aren't futurists. They're Christians, they love God, but they're like, no, I don't see any of that. And I'm like, look, Israel is the mega sign. Many of them think it's coincidental that Israel became a nation in 1948 and that it's just as important as Zimbabwe becoming a nation. And then you're I couldn't disagree with you more, but, again, agreeably, but look, guys, God brought Israel back in 1948. He says, Ezekiel 36, 37, 38, I have brought them back from many nations in the latter years. So how do we know we're in the latter times? Because God said when Israel comes back, he'll bring them over on the mountains, which lay desolate for a long time. And they did. The mountains of Israel lay desolate for 1,800 plus years. So the fact that they're here now, I think God knows the timing. And that was 77 years ago.
Yeah.
So here, again, we're progressing now, and all these things are coming to bear. Ultimately, we have 5 red heifers show up in September 15th of 2022. That is after a hiatus of, again, 1,850 years. It's really interesting.
Mondo, you go through several viewpoints in your book that kind of deal with how Christians should view the building of the Third Temple and the Red Heifer movement. Can you talk about some of those and tell us what your personal opinion is?
What I did is I noticed that when the red heifers arrived, of course, there was a lot of conversation about them in September of 22. And since then, they have 3 of them are still qualified. That's the current update. I stay in touch with Byron Stenson, who was from Mondo, Israel. So what you had, though, was this conversation that different prophecy teachers about the importance of the red heifers or about the Third Temple. And so what I did is I thought, well, I want to ask all of these guys, is it okay to give money? Because some people will say, hey, should a Christian give money to the rebuilding of the Third Temple? Should they give money to the care of the heifers and other things? And so I threw it out to, 10 or 15 different prophecy teachers, and got their opinions. And what I found was that for the most part, there was general agreement, but there was some disagreement. Some teachers would say, "Oh yeah, it's okay. You know, you're participating in the move of God to bring Jesus back, and this is just part of the prophecy." Others are very eager about participating with the Jewish people, and then others are say very strongly, "No, a Christian shouldn't." And that's kind of the way I asked it, because normally one of the ways I like to ask things, especially as a pastor, is because people ask us, "Is it a sin?"
Oh,
Okay. That's strong, right?
Yeah.
yes.
And so as a pastor, you want to say, well, if I tell you it's a sin, I got to have a Bible verse, to back me up, because obviously God has the authority, not me. But where I land is that if somebody gave money to support the third temple, I don't have a verse to say that's a sin. But all I can tell you is would I do it? And I would not. I wouldn't do it because if I gave money, and I would give money to Jews for Jesus. I'd give money to chosen people in order to see that money be used to preach them the gospel so they get
Right.
saved.
Right.
Because what do we know? We know that this temple is keeping them from seeing Jesus. It's like reading John 5 all over again. We have Moses, Jesus, we don't need you. He says, well, if you believed in Moses, you'd believe in me because he wrote about me. So for them, what we see in John chapter 5, this battle between Jesus and Moses, is exactly what happens now. And so for them, they don't even consider Jesus. And so as they move forward, why would I want to donate to something that's going to keep them in darkness? And we know as well that they're going to be duped by this coming Antichrist figure who's going to allow them to re-embrace Moses, build the temple, and he's going to come in, and we know in the middle, and desecrate it and declare himself to be God. And there's no salvation there. So I think in my mind, if I'm going to invest in something, I'd rather see them invested in the gospel, which is their only way of salvation.
Are you able to try to reconcile the varying interpretations and opinions with Christians and their different communities regarding the support for the red heifer and the temple movements?
This might be good. Derek, I mean, you wrote in the book. Share your thoughts on it.
If you're asking me today and where I am today, I think I would be in agreement with you. We very much support the people of Israel. You can see on my lapel, I not only have the
exactly.
flag, sir, I've got a shekel, which was turned into a pin. And we believe, as you do, that if we're going to donate, let's donate to Bridges for Peace, is a ministry that
Exactly.
we
Love that one.
visited in Jerusalem while we were there. We are not going to argue with our Jewish friends over this particular topic, but if they ask, I would just, here's where we stand as Christians. We do not need a third temple because our high priest is standing at the right hand of God.
Yeah.
And he's from the tribe of Judah, not the tribe of Levi. So there's been a change in the priesthood. And as we see in Hebrews chapter 7, with the change in the priesthood, there's a change in the law as well. So the law that requires you to build that third temple is now null and void as far as we are concerned as Christians. I heard a really good explanation from this, a young apologist named Wesley Huff, who's been in the news quite a lot lately for a rather interesting interaction he had with an atheist or a New Ager. But he said, look, the law does not save you. The law is like a mirror that shows you how dirty you are. It does not
Right.
clean you up.
Right.
It is Christ and the blood of Christ that cleans you up. So that's my view as a Christian.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, there are those that we probably won't reconcile it. I mean, they're gonna say, yeah, I support the building of the third temple. I think the struggle that I have is just interacting with the book of Hebrews as well as Matthew. We know that the veil was torn.
Yes.
Yes.
From top to bottom, and therefore the way is open. So to try to replace the veil, it's contradicting exactly what God spoke. So it's one thing for mankind to do their machinations about things, but when God rips the veil, according to Hebrews, and shows us that the way is open, the new and living way through Jesus the Messiah, that is crystal clear. So anything else is backwards. We know we can't argue anybody into the kingdom. We just say, hey, look, this is what it is, and if you ask my opinion, look, there's no salvation in no other name except Jesus.
Yeah.
Right.
End of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In your view, Mondo, are there some common misconceptions or misunderstandings surrounding the red heifer ritual, of course, and its significance in end times Bible prophecy?
Yeah, there's a couple that come up quite often, and one is not understanding the spiritual nature. Because I try to anticipate objections. I appreciate them, actually, and because they're good questions. Well, don't you know, Mondo, that in 1 Corinthians 3 is an example that the church is called the temple? It's true. The body is called the temple. John chapter 2, Jesus said his body was a temple. But the problem is they're taking this figurative use, which it is there in very rare, but it's a rare instance, okay, of the 44 times that the word is used. And they try to apply that to the rest of it. And you're like, hey, look, you have to look at everything in context. And so once you explain that, you're saying, how do you have an altar and you're measuring the temple in Revelation 11? How is that figurative? Especially if
Yeah.
our body, is the Antichrist sitting in the temple of God, declaring himself to be God in my body?
Right.
If I force it on that, it just doesn't work. So context is king in interpreting the Bible. And that's one area. The other one, too, is it kind of goes back to that, just our previous discussion, in that how could you be excited about the temple being built? And just go, well, wait a minute. Let me tell you, again, what I'm really excited about. I'm not excited about this in a very narrow sense. I'm excited because what we're seeing at this time with red heifers and temple preparations is that shows us that Jesus is coming.
Right.
And Jesus is coming on the back end of that, and he's going to fix the world.
Right.
So I think many times there's this, because we say we're excited, they misunderstand that we're endorsing. So, and that's really the key is I'm not endorsing the third temple being built. I'm excited it being built because of what Jesus is going to bring after.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you can support the ministry of Skywatch TV and our continued efforts to share the gospel of Jesus Christ throughout the four corners of the world and receive your very own copy of this urgent new work when you order the Mystery of the Red Heifer special offer. Not only does this incredible opportunity include Mondo Gonzales' new book, The Mystery of the Red Heifer, Israel, the End Times and the Building of the Third Temple, but it also includes the best-selling book, The Rabbis, Donald Trump and the Top Secret Plan to Build the Third Temple with 5-part television series companion DVD by the late Dr. Thomas Horn. This incredible book with companion DVD uncovers for the first time the mysteries of the Antichrist's rise and his secret plans already in motion to build the abomination of desolation, the event that will trigger the apocalypse. These works reveal the connection between Donald Trump and the Third Temple. Is he Israel's modern-day King Cyrus, chosen by God to oversee its construction? Temple treasures. The recent archaeological discoveries that could reveal the Ark of the Covenant and other relics that tie directly to the construction of the Third Temple. And the abomination of desolation. What it is, why it's coming, and how world leaders are positioning themselves for its arrival right now. Sold separately, these items hold a retail value of over $60. Yours now for your donation of only $45, which includes free shipping to all U.S. orders. You can scan the QR code on your screen using the camera app on your phone for instant access to this special opportunity. You can also visit us at skywatchtvstore.com or call 1-844-750-4985 and ask for the Mystery of the Red Heifer special offer right now. Not a special opportunity you're going to want to miss out on. Mondo, with just a few minutes left on the clock, in your opinion, what are some of the potential implications, both religiously and geopolitically, of the construction of the Third Temple in our current era?
It was fascinating being in the progress of writing the book as things shifted, politically. And we know that the greatest influence on the nation of Israel is the United States. And so to see the Biden administration going back really being what we'd call 3.0 of Obama, of his first two administrations, very unfriendly to Israel.
Right.
They would hamstring them. They would tie their hands in so many ways. And so it was interesting as the election happened, and Netanyahu was dancing at being very careful because even after the election happened in November, he still had, 6-8 weeks of trying not to offend Biden because of what Obama did on his last days is he allowed a resolution to go into the United Nations condemning Israel into the Security Council. And Netanyahu didn't want that again because they allowed it and they didn't veto it. So, politics can be very nasty. But now that we've come past January 20th, it's fascinating that in Israel right now, the rabbis, they are giddy. They are giddy beyond belief because they look back and they see Trump's first administration. As people might or might not know, they created a Trump coin. They minted the Trump coin. They have on there Isaiah 45 as it relates to Cyrus being this called the Anointed, the Mashiach, a non-Jewish messianic figure. Now they're thinking, of course, this is going to be even better that the embassy was moved over in 2017. And so they have a lot of high hopes. And let's just be honest, Trump loves the adulation. Like it or not.
Yeah.
Hey, I follow his Telegram channel. And so he's very complimentary about his victories, When they make these coins, they feed to his ego.
Of course.
It is just what it is. And so I think his natural bent is to help them even more. And so they know that. And so if you look at their writings that they're coming out now, They really believe this is the time.
Yeah.
At least the next 4 years, and possibly even immediately as it relates to the red heifer ceremony. Because once Hamas, that whole thing kind of gets solidified or cleaned up to some degree, and we know so far that we're in the midst of this ceasefire, and Trump has said quite clearly that he has no room. He's acknowledged there's no room for Hamas. So Israel's now going to become emboldened, not only from a political perspective, but remember, this is the most religious government in the history of Israel. Itamar Ben-Gvir, the security minister, has been very vocal about going onto the Temple Mount and other things. So in the regard of, I would say this, that even last year, when they were anticipating having the ceremony on the Mount of Olives, that stopped because of political situation. From this point forward, there's going to be no better optimism to have the ceremony take place than in the next 4 years. And for them, sooner the better.
Do you know I have a picture of your dad holding that coin?
Wow.
I do.
No, I don't think I've ever seen it if you do.
I do, because we did a program about that. He was on the old set, and I asked if I could get a picture of it.
Oh, my word.
Interesting.
The little blue red.
The old
Yeah,
set.
Oh, my word.
Yeah.
I'll have to see. You'll have to make sure I get a copy.
I'll send it to
So,
you.
but we can vouch for the excitement in Israel because we were there in 2018, which was the 70th anniversary of Israel's independence. And on the first day that the U.S. Embassy moved, we were there on the bus. We were the first busload to see the sign that says U.S. Embassy this way in Jerusalem.
Thank you, Mr.
And there were parties in the streets going on right there. Donald Trump has been more popular among the people of Israel than among the people of the United States. And this has been true. Our friend Avi Lipkin, as you know, says Israel's 60% conservative, 20% Arab, 20% socialist. It's just that the socialists run the judiciary and the military, but the people of Israel, 60% of Israel, very, very pro-Trump.
Yeah, they talked about him even beating Netanyahu in a race.
Mondo, we've only got a few minutes left on the clock. One of the things you deal with in The Mystery of the Red Heifer, your new book, at the crux of this whole discussion, it's basically that God really, really does have a plan, newsflash, for the people of Israel and, of course, the Jewish people. What is it that you want those watching this interview to take away the very most?
My heart really is to persuade Christians who love the Lord to move away from replacement theology, or they like to say fulfillment theology,
Yes.
and to embrace a future for Israel because of what it says. The gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable. We know in Romans 9 and Romans 11 that they are beloved. Now, it does say in Romans 11 that as it relates to the gospel, they're enemies. But as it relates to the election, they're still beloved. Not past tense, it's present tense.
Right.
So when we think about the future of Israel, we also look and we recognize, and I talk about this in the book, that we need to be honest. We're truth tellers. So when people talk about the state of Israel, as an example, is one of the biggest promoters of LGBTQ. We don't deny that. God is not pleased with the nation of Israel, but there still is people. It's like when we look at the nation of Israel today and its behavior, it's like reading the book of Judges.
Right.
Yeah.
It's no different.
Exactly.
There was no king. Everybody did what was right in their own eyes, right? So when we look at that, and they didn't cease being God's people just because they were rebellious in the book of Judges, or all the way down to the Babylonian captivity. So as we look at this, it's important when we see these developments happen, as Christians, we need to be able to nuance very careful to defend and support Israel's right to be in the land, but also to say, in one sense, do they deserve to be there? No, they don't deserve to be there. Deuteronomy 9 tells us they never deserve to be there. It's because of God's kindness and his grace and his promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He says that very clearly. It's not because of your righteousness am I bringing you in. So if we nuance those things carefully, we can help people to say, hey, look, we're not blindly just defending everything that happens. But remember, God has a promise for them. And we know that the purpose of the tribulation period, one of that purposes, not only for the rest of the world, but specifically the 7th week of Daniel, is to see them come to salvation.
Amen.
Right.
And that's what we're seeing. These developments are there because the goal is they're going to call out to Jesus. He said, you won't see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord.
Amen.
Wow.
With just a couple of minutes left, Mondo, what insights do you hope readers will gain from your book regarding the red heifer ritual and its broader implications on biblical prophecy?
Again, I wasn't raised a Christian. I was an atheist at one time in college, and I'm so glad God developed prophecy in my life, because you see this in Isaiah 41, Isaiah 44, other passages. God says, hey, look, world, there's a lot of alleged holy books, the Quran, Mormon, Vedas, you name it. There's one book that stands out, and God says, I'm the only one. I know the end from the beginning. Let's bring everybody together. Let's have them predict the future. The Bible is the only book that predicts the future.
Yeah.
And so if it's true there, Jesus would say, look, if I'm going to talk to you about earthly things and you can't handle it, how can I talk to you about heavenly things? So in the same way, the Bible shows itself to be God's word, which we have facts now. We have temple prophecies that's being accomplished. We have red heifers that are following in. We have all of these things. And if this is true here, then it should point us that salvation is found in Jesus alone.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the beautiful thing. That's what God says. I'm going to give you an objective way to establish which spiritual reality is accurate. And we know there's thousands of prophecies in the Bible. But for us, we tend to be, well, what can I see in my own age? Well, here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Yeah. Amen. Well, with about 30 seconds left on the clock, Mondo, where can people that want to learn more about your ministry go?
The best place is prophecywatchers.com. We have a lot of different things. We have apps and everything. But if you go there and you see where to find us, you'll see the whole list of things of where to find all of our work.
We love Mondo Gonzales here at Skywatch. You do such a great job hosting that program, and we love our friends at Prophecy Watchers.
Yes, we do.
Unfortunately, we're all out of time. Ladies and gentlemen, for everybody here in studio, everybody on panel, Mondo, thanks again for being here this week. I'm Joe Artis Horn. Keep your eyes on the prize, which is Jesus Christ. We'll be back. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you can support the ministry of Skywatch TV in our continued efforts to share the gospel of Jesus Christ throughout the four corners of the world and receive your very own copy of this urgent new work when you order the Mystery of the Red Heifer special offer. Not only does this incredible opportunity include Mondo Gonzales' new book, The Mystery of the Red Heifer, Israel, the End Times, and the Building of the Third Temple, but it also includes the best-selling book, The Rabbis, Donald Trump, and the Top Secret Plan to Build the Third Temple with 5-part television series companion DVD by the late Dr. Thomas Horn. This incredible book with companion DVD uncovers for the first time the mysteries of the Antichrist's rise and his secret plans already in motion to build the abomination of desolation, the event that will trigger the apocalypse. These works reveal the connection between Donald Trump and the Third Temple. Is he Israel's modern-day King Cyrus, chosen by God to oversee its construction? Temple treasures. The recent archaeological discoveries that could reveal the Ark of the Covenant and other relics that tie directly to the construction of the Third Temple. And the abomination of desolation. What it is, why it's coming, and how world leaders are positioning themselves for its arrival right now. Sold separately, these items hold a retail value of over $60. Yours now for your donation of only $45, which includes free shipping to all U.S. orders. You can scan the QR code on your screen using the camera app on your phone for instant access to this special opportunity. You can also visit us at skywatchtvstore.com or call 1-844-750-4985 and ask for the Mystery of the Red Heifer special offer right now.